Welcome back to another session, Caribbean and Latin American news now. And Venezuela, we're still on the topic of Venezuela. That is Maria Corina Machado, has recently been nominated as she has really received, she has just received, or recently received the Nobel Peace Prize. That's Maria Corina Machado, and she is the opposition leader of Venezuela. For those of you who don't understand and don't know the politics of Venezuela, she was the one who went up against, well, she did not go up against Nicolás Maduro because she was actually booted from office in 2014 because Maduro suggested that she was someone who was perhaps using as an asset of the United States. So she was actually booted from, she wasn't allowed to run for the presidency of Venezuela. And I understand that she is in hiding right now because she is afraid of the authoritarian presidency of Nicolás Maduro. So for though we want to congratulate the people of Venezuela for one of their citizens receiving, particularly a woman receiving, because she is one among few women who have received this very prestigious prize. Now, listen to what the NBC, before we got into the NBC, though, that's the topic that I wanted to highlight. Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, has just been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So she has been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, celebrated by Washington as the Lady of Steel, who is keeping democracy alive. She's keeping the flames of democracy alive. That is what Washington suggests. But critics say her selection was no coincidence, calling it part of the US-led campaign to isolate President Nicolás Maduro and reassert control over Venezuela's vast oil and gas wealth. As Russia and China call for an emergency UN Security Council meeting, questions arise. Is the West preparing for a new confrontation with Venezuela? Could this Nobel Peace Prize be the soft power prelude to a hard power intervention? In this episode, I'll break down the real geopolitics behind the award, linking it to Washington's regional strategy, the war on sovereignty, and the growing Russia-China-Venezuela alliance. Please stay tuned. Now, let's open up with the news from NBC, right? That is a cable network in the United States. And the title is Nobel Peace Prize awarded to Venezuela's Maria Corina Machado. When authoritarians seize power, it is crucial to recognize courageous defenders of freedom who rise and resist, the committee said. And that is the Nobel Peace Prize committee. The Nobel Peace Prize was awarded Friday to Venezuela opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who lives in hiding after attempting to run for the presidency last year against President Nicolás Maduro. Machado, 58, was recognized for keeping the flame of democracy burning amidst a growing darkness and ever-expanding authoritarianism in Venezuela. Now, we notice that the United States likes to use the term authoritarianism a lot, even to describe Trump, which is very interesting that they're in America. The so-called left-wing media houses like the NBCs and the CNNs, right, among a host of other than the CBSs, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, all of these so-called, and I could use so-called, left-wing media outlets suggest that Trump is an autocratic, authoritarian government. Yet still, they are supporting Donald Trump in his quest to depose Nicolás Maduro, who they also are describing, or they repeat ad nauseum. So sometimes they pretend as if they're against the policy of Trump to unseat Nicolás Maduro, but they're not. They're supporting him. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the NBCs, and that is why they're using these words: authoritarian president, to brainwash you, to condition your minds for the upcoming invasion or regime change that will occur in the Bolivarian state of Venezuela. Okay, that is what they're trying to do, to condition your mind. So always look at the word authoritarian. They're using it very frequently, very lightly, and it's a way of indoctrinating and brainwashing, hoodwinking you into believing that Nicolás Maduro is autocratic more than Donald Trump. when the New York Times is also ironically describing Donald Trump as also authoritarian. So one authoritarian president is seeking to unseat another authoritarian president. Make that make sense, right? Make that make sense. Despite speculation that President Donald Trump might win the prize for his role helping to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, among other things, Machado emerged as a late favorite in online betting platforms hours before the decision came. So this is an online betting thing. It's not based on principles. It's not based on any objectivity, as far as we know. Reacting to the award Friday, White House Communications Director Stephen Chung accused the Nobel Committee of placing politics over peace. Well, he's suggesting here that he wanted Donald Trump to win. But you're going to see that it's working in their favor, because it's working in their favor of regime change. The winner, Machado, is currently in hiding and faces serious threats against her life, having been blocked from running for president and expelled from office. And this is what the chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee told a news conference in Oslo. Oh my God, I have no words. She kept repeating when given the news over the telephone by Christian Berg or Vinken, director of the Norwegian Nobel Institute, who could be seen in a video of the call, becoming visibly emotional as he spoke. And he says, I hope you understand that this is a movement. I think this is her words. Yeah, I hope this is now María Machado's words. Okay, María Corina Machado's words. And I quote, I hope you understand that this is a movement. This is a movement because it's for regime change. This is the achievement of a whole society. I'm just one person. I certainly do not deserve this, she said, learning of her accolade just minutes before it was made public. I'm honored, humbled, and very grateful, and on behalf of the Venezuelan people. We're not just there yet. We're not there yet, she's saying, in terms of regime change. We're not there yet. Or perhaps she's suggesting that they're not at the state of becoming a democratic state yet. We are working very hard to achieve it, and I'm certain we will prevail. So all of this also is loaded words. Could be regime change, could be to be converted, or to return to a state of democracy. Okay? You'll choose. Now, with nicknames such as the Lady of Steel and the Iron Lady, she has been among the most high-profile victims of Maduro's intensifying crackdown against opposition figures, journalists, and civil society during his increasingly repressive rule. And the same thing is happening in Washington, in the United States, with Donald Trump and his, actually going after left-wing people, as the left-wing people went after the right-wing people when they were in power. So what's different between what is happening in Washington, D.C. and what perhaps is happening in Caracas? I don't know if there's a difference. Do you? Do you see a difference? I don't see any difference. Now, born in 1967 in Caracas, she studied engineering and finance, that is María Corina Machado, and had a short career in business before founding the Antinio Foundation in 1992, which supported street children in the capital. So she's philanthropic. She was elected to the nation's National Assembly in 2010, only to be expelled 4 years later on allegations her supporters said were trumped up. Okay, so maybe she was working for who you know, but perhaps the CIA, I don't know. But, Maduro expelled her and didn't want her to run for office anymore. Okay, so that's interesting. So the United States, I understand, selected her because she was actually a standard bearer, a champion in the region for peace and democracy. Okay, now listen to what this is. The Nobel Committee's concerns about the weakening of democracy are relevant as anywhere in Trump's America, according to scholars. With the current developments in the United States under the Trump administration, even that country's democracy seems to be in jeopardy. But yet it is the one who is leading out in reinstalling, if it were, restoring, as it were, democracy in Venezuela. The Trump administration is currently working assiduously at regime change in Venezuela, while the Nobel Peace Committee is describing Trump's administration as being authoritarian. A world-respected arbiter of these freedoms, with Trump's threats to prosecute his rivals, punish critical media, and deploy the army to repress protests. The same things that they're accusing Maduro of doing in Venezuela, Trump is currently doing in the United States. And this is coming from NBC News. This is not a conspiracy theory network, according to you. Okay? Asked Friday about how the committee dealt with the campaigning and speculation around Trump's nomination for the prize, the chairman said members were unmoved. All right? Now, that's interesting because I understand that it was the then Senator, Marco Rubio, who is now the Secretary of State under Trump's regime, who was one of the persons who selected her, her name, who submitted her name to be one of the contestants for the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, this reminds me of President Barack Hussein Obama and the fact that they gave him such also a Peace Prize before he had even started his presidency. And even though he was a war president himself, but they had given him that very prestigious prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, remember now that before Barack Obama came into office, we had George W. Bush, and he was also described as an autocratic, authoritarian president who was moving the United States away from its principles of democracy. Okay, so Barack had to come to restore that democracy. So they had to give him that peace, that Nobel Peace Prize, to cement confidence in the people, to imbibe the confidence in Americans and perhaps the world at large that Barack Hussein Obama was there to reestablish democracy, which he didn't. He continued in the same mode of authoritarianism in the United States. Okay, so will María Corina Machado of Venezuela, if Nicolás Maduro should demit office tomorrow, would she be the one to continue the US-style authoritarianism in the Caribbean, in that Latin American country? Because the US doesn't have any problem with authoritarianism, but it must be US-style authoritarianism, US-style dictatorship. That is what you have to understand. It has absolutely no problem with authoritarianism and dictatorship. And I want you to understand that. And that is why we are seeing, as NBC reported, the same trends we're seeing in Washington, or the same trends that the United States is against in Venezuela, or is alleging that it's against in Venezuela. And for that reason, they would like regime change. Yet still, the United States has similar characteristics. How ironic and how contradictory. And we have to look at these things very carefully. But the fact that they've given to her someone who is hardly known, I never even heard of her name before yesterday. And I study Latin American history. Hablo español. Hablo muy bien español. He estudiado español en la universidad. So I speak Spanish, studied Spanish at university level, and I follow Latin American news quite closely. Okay? Follow Latin American news quite closely. And this is the first time, la primera vez, the first time that I am hearing about Maria, what's her name? María Machado. María Corina Machado. That's her name, her full name. Okay, first time. So nobody knows about her. Nobody knows of her work. And I think that for this prize to mean something, we should have known something about her, apart from just being philanthropic and helping a few children on the streets of Venezuela. That's all that she has done. But they're saying that she's fanning the flames of democracy. And she's champion of peace in the region. Because if, lo and behold, if Maduro leaves office tomorrow, if he is deposed and is no longer the president of Venezuela, we're just going to miraculously, magically have peace in the Caribbean region. Does that make sense to you? Does that even make any sense? That just the removal of one man from office, the entire region is going to enjoy peace. Okay, that is what they're implying, which does not make any sense to the intellectual mind, to the critical thinker. That does not make one iota of sense, but people believe it. Okay, and that is why she has been given this Peace Prize, this Nobel Peace Prize, as a precursor to regime change, is a symbolic gesture that Washington desires peace in the region. And while Trump is there warring on the US citizens, okay, he wants peace because war is peace. And that is what you have to understand. These unending wars are what will usher us into a century, into an era of peace. Welcome to 1984, the Orwellian state. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. And please send me your intelligent, thoughtful, incisive commentaries so that I can be able, and I always respond to you, right? Don't I? I try to respond to you as quickly as possible. And the most intelligent and, the most incisive commentaries, I'll sometimes pin them so that others can see them, respond to them, because it's important that we have very serious, enlightened discussions in the region, which I think that there's a dearth of good journalism within the region. So it's now time to grow the base, time now to subscribe, move up to 10K subscription by the end of the year. We can do it. Let's move on. Let's subscribe to the channel so that we can get biting, incisive commentaries, political, social, and cultural commentaries from the Caribbean and Latin America. So long. Adios.